The fog rolled into Ravenswood like a shroud. It clung to the old Victorian houses, muffling the world in silence. Streetlights cast weak yellow circles, doing little to pierce the gloom. A chill wind whispered through the trees, their bare branches swaying like skeletal fingers. It was the kind of night that sent shivers down your spine, a night for secrets and things best left unseen.
Sarah hurried along the deserted sidewalk, her breath misting in the cold air. She hugged her coat tighter, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The fog seemed to press in on her, suffocating, disorienting. It was as though the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen.
A dog barked in the distance, a lonely, mournful sound. Sarah jumped, her nerves on edge. She quickened her pace, her eyes darting from side to side, searching the shadows. There was a feeling of wrongness in the air, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She'd always hated this town, hated the secrets it hid beneath its charming facade. But this time, she had no choice but to return. This time, something was calling her back. The phone call had come just as she was about to give up hope. A wrong number, the operator had said, but the voice that had whispered her name was unmistakable.
Sarah, help me.
It was James, her brother, missing for almost a year. His voice was faint, distorted, as if coming from a great distance.
James, where are you?
She had cried into the phone, her heart leaping with a mixture of hope and terror.
The cabin? Ravenswood.
He had gasped, his voice barely audible. Then silence. Nothing but the empty hiss of the dial tone. Now, clutching the phone like a lifeline, Sarah navigated the twisting streets of her childhood. Her mind raced. James was alive. He needed her. But Ravenswood held only bad memories. Their family history was intertwined with the town's dark legends, whispers of a curse that clung to their bloodline. She pushed the thoughts away. Focus. She had to find James. The cabin. He had said the cabin. Ravenswood. Even its name sounded like a threat. A place of dark woods and hidden glens. A place where shadows danced and secrets whispered on the wind. The townsfolk had their stories, passed down through generations. Tales of strange disappearances, of houses that hummed with unseen energy. Sarah had dismissed them as superstition, but now...
She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell. Stories of a malevolent entity that haunted the woods, a being that fed on fear and despair. And the mirror, a cursed antique passed down through their family for generations. It was said to be a gateway, a portal to somewhere else, somewhere dark and dangerous.
Sarah shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her. Her grandmother had warned her about the mirror, told her it was best left undisturbed. But James, had he gone to the cabin? Had he somehow become entangled with the mirror's power? The thought sent a chill down her spine. She had to reach James, had to warn him. But what if it was already too late? The old dirt road leading to the cabin was overgrown and barely passable. The headlights of Sarah's car cut through the fog, illuminating the gnarled branches of ancient trees that lined the path. They seemed to reach out towards her, their skeletal fingers scraping against the roof of the car. The cabin loomed out of the mist, a dark and brooding silhouette against the grey sky. It had been years since she had last been here, yet it felt eerily familiar, as if no time had passed at all. The porch sagged precariously and the windows were dark, like empty eyes staring out into the night.
As she stepped out of the car, a wave of icy cold washed over her. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, and an unnatural silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of her own breathing. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, watching her. Taking a deep breath, Sarah walked toward the cabin. Each step was an effort, her feet dragging like lead weights. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip around her chest. But she had come too far to turn back now. James was counting on her.
The door creaked open on rusty hinges, revealing a dusty interior shrouded in darkness.
Sounding nervous. Oh, come on, where's the light switch?
Sarah fumbled for a light switch, her hand trembling. The bulb flickered to life, casting a dim yellow glow across the room. Dust motes danced in the stagnant air, and cobwebs hung from every corner. It was as if time had stood still within these walls, preserving the past in all its unsettling glory. A fire crackled in the old stone fireplace, casting flickering shadows that danced across the walls.
But how? There was no one else here, was there?
As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she noticed something strange. The old mirror, the one her grandmother had warned her about, stood on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. Its ornate silver frame was tarnished with age, and the glass itself seemed to shimmer and distort, as if a pool of water lay trapped beneath its surface. And then she saw him. James, his face pale and drawn, stared out at her from the depths of the mirror. His eyes were wide with fear, his mouth moving silently, forming words she couldn't hear.
Silently mouthing, "Help me, Sarah."
Panic welled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her, but she pushed it down, forcing herself to stay calm. She had to help James, but how?
Determined. Think, Sarah, think.
As she stared at the mirror, a memory flickered at the edge of her mind. A story her grandmother had told her about a ritual, a way to communicate with the spirits trapped within the mirror's depths. It was a dangerous game, her grandmother had warned, one that could have unforeseen consequences. But what choice did she have?
Echoing in memory. Remember, Sarah, the ritual is not to be taken lightly. It can have unforeseen consequences.
She found an old leather-bound book lying on a dusty shelf, its pages brittle with age. As she flipped through the yellowed parchment, she recognized the strange symbols and diagrams. This was it, the ritual.
Resolute. I have to do this.
Following the instructions, she gathered the necessary ingredients: a silver coin, a lock of her hair, and a drop of her own blood. The air crackled with energy as she arranged the objects in a circle around the mirror, their power palpable, almost alive.
Whispering, "Here goes nothing." Chanting the words from the book, her voice echoing through the silent cabin, Sarah felt a surge of power course through her.
The mirror hummed, its surface rippling like water disturbed by a stone.
"Please, Sarah." His voice, a strained whisper, seemed to come from the mirror itself. "Help me."
Closing her eyes, Sarah concentrated, pouring all her love, all her fear into the ritual. The air crackled and popped, the scent of ozone stinging her nostrils. A blinding flash of light erupted from the mirror, forcing her to shield her eyes. She gasped, stumbling backward.
When she opened her eyes, James stood before her, his back to the mirror, his face etched with relief. He stumbled, reaching out to her.
"Sarah, you did it," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I thought I was trapped forever."
Relief washed over her. She rushed to him, embracing him tightly. He was cold, his skin clammy, but he was real, solid. He was alive. But as she stepped back, her gaze fell on the mirror. It was no longer a portal reflecting the familiar interior of the cabin. It now showed a swirling vortex of colors, a kaleidoscope of impossible geometries. And something was moving within its depths. Something dark and hungry. A low growl, guttural and menacing, emanated from the mirror, sending shivers down her spine.
James followed her gaze, his eyes widening in horror. "We have to go," he said urgently, pulling her towards the door. "Now!"
But it was too late. A clawed hand, black as night, shot out from the mirror, its long, bony fingers grasping at the air. Terror lent speed to their steps. James grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. They bolted out of the cabin and into the night, the growls from the mirror growing louder, closer. The woods were alive with unseen eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sending chills down their spines. They ran blindly, desperately, branches whipping at their faces, their lungs burning.
But the entity was faster. It emerged from the woods, a towering figure wreathed in shadows, its eyes glowing with malevolent glee. It lunged, its claws aimed at James.
With a cry, Sarah threw herself in front of him, pushing him out of the way. The last thing Sarah saw before the darkness claimed her was the look of horror on James's face, the reflection of the creature's triumph in his eyes. Then she was falling, tumbling through a vortex of colours and shadows, the echoes of James's screams ringing in her ears. She landed hard on cold, damp ground, the air thick with the stench of decay. Struggling to sit up, she realized with a growing sense of dread that she was no longer in the woods. She was somewhere else, somewhere cold and dark and utterly alien. And the mirror, now whole and gleaming, stood before her, reflecting not her terrified face, but the triumphant smirk of the creature that had taken her place. James was free, but she was trapped. The price of his freedom, she realized with a chilling certainty, was her soul.